The Total War Warhammer series has a massive amount of choices when it comes to races and starting factions. Naturally, with so many choices, some are better than others. So with this video, I'd like to go over my top 10 picks for the best race and starting location. Just a quick heads up before we begin anything, I would just like to state that obviously these are my personal opinions, and the video is basically centered around the Mortal Empires campaign, so none of my opinions reflect onto the first game or the Eye of the Vortex. I might do a video series on those two in the future though. So without further ado, let's begin. Coming at number 10, we have Wurzag and the Bloody Hands tribe. Now, I was debating whether or not to add the Greenskins to this list, seeing as they still are due an Old World update, but even then I've always seen Wurzag as one of the key lords for the Greenskin factions, especially since he reduces and buffs the Savage Orcs amazingly well. While these buffs only work for Wurzag, you can get a 20-man stack relatively quickly, and then you can hire some basic goblin units as a second army to act as the defense. Honestly, Savage Orcs are very powerful, and seeing them buffed up is just amazing. I was debating between Azag and Grimgor too, but let's face it, they both need updates. Azag himself is not pretty good until later on when he actually gets access to the Law of Dark Magic, and Grimgor, yeah, he still needs an update. Moving on to number 9, it's Karl Franz and the Empire. Now, yes, it's another Old World faction, and yeah, they are still due an update, but regardless of that, they're still seen as the main jack of all trades in terms of factions. They've got heavy artillery, they've got loads of unit choices, a lot of magic choices too, and let's face it, geographically, it's a good location. Out of the 3 lord choices when picking the empires at the time of recording this video, I see that Karl Franz is usually the best option, due to the fact that he increases recruited lords by 2 levels, I believe, and he drastically reduces the upkeep of Reiksguard and Greatswords, which, let's face it, works out quite well late game. With the extra campaign movement speed also being absolutely fantastic, especially late game when you're trying to defend yourselves on multiple fronts. Honestly, all 3 starting legendary lords work out quite well, but in my personal opinion, I would always go for Karl Franz. Number 8 is a personal favourite of mine when it comes to the Vampire Coast, that being Count Noctilus. Now, a lot of people would probably think I'm only picking him because he starts with a Necrofex Colossus, and in truth, it's kind of that reason, but also it's because of the Galleon's Graveyard. Geographically, it's in a very good location, you're quite isolated, it'll take a while for people to come to you, and let's face it, they'll have to take a lot of attrition to get to you. It leaves you with a better option where you can actually leave the city undefended for a while and actually just establish pirate coves, move around, and explore without having to worry too much. With maybe just leaving a basic defense force in the city, nothing too spectacular because the garrison is actually quite good. It was actually quite tough to pick between him and Luther Harkin, but at the end of the day, the geographical bonus from that is just fantastic. Number 7 in my opinion is Lizardman and Kroq-Gar. Now, Kroq-Gar himself starts off in a very corner of the map, which is kind of rare when it comes to this. I don't think any other race actually starts in a corner. So this lets you expand, just dealing with the Skaven that you have to deal with and then moving your way up. You don't really have to worry about anything coming from behind or through the side. You're just basically just moving forward until you actually have to get into the greater world. It's quite a good faction for those people who are kind of new to the series and not too used to micromanaging and dealing with multiple enemies in multiple fronts. And let's face it, the leadership bonus and upkeep reduction that he has for just himself, and then the faction-wide upkeep reduction is just absolutely mental. You can field armies really quickly, especially cheaper units. This will allow you to move your way northward without having to worry too much about spending too much money on loads of baseline units. You can actually have 2 or 3 armies pretty much within 20 turns. I understand he's not the most interesting of legendary lords, him being very melee based and not having any magic and so on, but let's face it, you start off with a Skink Priest too, so you've kind of got that covered. Moving on to number 6, and I might get a little flack for this one, but it's Settra the Imperishable and the Tomb Kings. So the reason why I'm picking this race and lord combo is because of his bonuses to growth, public order, and the fact that he also increases the speed as how capital buildings are built. If I recall correctly, it's reducing it by 1 turn, which might not seem like a lot, but believe me, as the Tomb Kings, the faster you get this stuff built, the better it is, because that way you can unlock stronger units and so on. Naturally, Settra himself is also a powerhouse, whether you put him on his golden chariot or on the War Sphinx. He is quite strong, and early on all you have to really deal with is just other Tomb Kings and Savage Orcs, which, let's face it, you can take them out within a good few turns. Our 5th spot for this video is everybody's favourite Norscan, Wulfric the Wanderer. I bet you didn't expect any northern tribes coming into this video, did you? So basically the reason why I picked him is because he reduces the upkeep for all Marauder units faction-wide by 15%. Marauders are cheap as it is, you're able to build them up quite quickly, which means more than likely you'll end up with 2 armies pretty much within turn 15 or so on, and I mean fully stacked armies in that case. I have noticed that it's very rare for the factions of the old world to actually come to you even though they declare war, usually because they'll have to travel through the ocean and they'll be fighting with other things, so usually they're too distracted. Very early game you can kind of just focus on building up and uniting Norsca, just getting a nice big amount of armies and so on, and then launching a massive invasion into the old world or to the new world depending on where you want to actually attack. And let's face it, the mechanic of just defeating the faction leader and taking over what's left of their kingdom, it works out quite well, especially if you're just trying to unite Norsca quickly. Our 4th spot belongs to Leonleonka and Britannia, and let's face it, the update that came out recently is just amazing. It finally overhauled Britannia to a standard that makes them actually quite good. Now you can easily confederate with factions, so it makes it a lot easier. All you need is a bit of cash, and let's face it, within turn 1 and 2 you're usually capturing Marienburg, so you do end up with quite a lot of cash. As long as you're smart with your income and you're not spending it too recklessly, and you pair that with the technology tree, you're pretty much uniting Britannia by around turn 35, I'd like to say, more or less. Which, if you look at it into the size of a kingdom, that's actually quite a large amount of land, which normally would be around level 2 and 3 cities, depending which one you focus on, so you're pretty much uniting a lot of it. You're basically getting a lot of income. If you use your buildings wisely and focus a lot of your building for your warriors in your capital city and use the other provinces to basically generate income, you're pretty much laughing all the way. If you haven't tried Britannia since they've been updated, honestly I highly recommend them. They're quickly becoming one of my favorite factions, and honestly, the update did amazing work. I cannot stress this enough. I couldn't do a list like this and not feature the Skaven somewhere. So for our 3rd spot, we have the Skaven and Ikit Claw. A lot of people might be scratching their head about this, but honestly, I think that Ikit Claw is the best legendary lord. He's in a great location because Skaven Blight is considered a marsh, so enemies have to take a while to actually get to your capital city. And, well, let's just look at all the new units that were added in, the fact that you've got Doom Rockets as Ikit Claw and not any other Skaven faction, with the Doom Rockets being horrendously broken at best. Let's face it, if a Chaos Army's charging at you and all you have to do is drop 1 bomb and pretty much take out 25% of them, easy mode is pretty much activated from turn 1. Our 2nd spot falls with Grombrindle, the White Dwarf, and obviously the Dawi. Let's face it, he's the best option right now because of his horrendous buffs. That's pretty much the only reason why people pick him at the start. The buffs are incredible. He can reduce upkeep. He can just give them more stats. He buffs up every lord in the game. So you pretty much just want to start off with him and just easily just start buffing up everyone else. And the dwarves themselves are quite an easy mode army. Their basic core line units have very great armor, their range is quite good, they've got loads of access to different types of artillery, some flyers, and let's just face it, a dwarven shield wall is just amazing. The only downside is dwarves are actually quite naturally slow, but you can use the underway to pretty much get through mountains and so on, so it's not really like you're being slowed down. Before we look at our last spot, I just kind of want to talk about a honorable mention, with that being Tyrion and the High Elves. I understand that they're one of the easiest races to play. You don't have a lot of enemies to deal with because Ulf 1 is quite isolated, so it's pretty much just High Elf allies that you can eventually confederate with, and just some Dark Elves that pretty much get wiped out within a few turns. And while in truth it is quite easy mode, it's kind of boring. They need to switch it up a lot, maybe add in a greenskin faction, Grom the Paunch maybe? It needs some variety. I'm not sure if a lot of other people think the same as I do, but I honestly find it incredibly boring. And now, without further ado, our last spot, Vlad von Carstein and the Vampire Counts. Or as I like to call it, easy mode even when on legendary. Vlad is horrendously overpowered, and once he gets to level 4, all your armies across the world map will pretty much be leveling at an incredibly fast pace due to an extra XP bonus that they get per turn. The fact that you can also get a 20 stack right from turn 1 and in turn 2 take over Drakenhof Castle if you don't really care about the Confederation and getting Manfred. You're pretty much capturing the whole of Sylvania, both eastern and western. You're pretty much capturing the whole of Sylvania within about 9 turns. The units are incredibly cheap. With research you can get your vampire count units, just the basic core such as the zombies and the skeletal warriors for no income whatsoever. So you're pretty much just fielding armies at baseline of what your hero is costing you. I can freely admit that I've pretty much got almost the whole of the world map on the Mortal Empires as the vampire counts with an army of zombies in just every city on the game. like almost every city. Honestly, if you're new to the series and you want to actually just have an easy time, even on the hardest difficulties, play as Vlad, and it's just going to be easy mode. It's not that difficult. The vampire counts back from range, but their magic is amazing, and loads of their units have fear, so it just kind of helps out. But before we end this video, what are your top race faction combinations? And I mean just basic steamrolling without any trouble. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. Once again, my friends, thank you so much for watching. I shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.